This video contains copyrighted material, which use, in accordance with U.S. copyright law, 17 U.S.C. Section 107 fair use, is allowed for the purposes of criticism, commenting, news reporting, teaching, and/or research, and is not an infringement of copyright. This is a non-profit, educational video, with the purpose of promoting social, political and economic awareness.
I saw the end of the world. I could feel all this death.
Is that the Syrian Arab News Agency, the official Syrian news agency, is reporting that there's been a missile strike on the T4 air base, which is about 100 kilometers north of Damascus in the Homs province. They are reporting that there have been casualties and fatalities there. But beyond that, we don't have a lot of detail. We do know that the Pentagon has denied that the United States launched an airstrike. Normally, the Americans are quite happy to boast about that sort of thing. The other suspect is the Israelis, and normally they deny any involvement in such things, even though oftentimes they are involved. Now, the T4 base is significant because it was from there on the 10th of February that an Iranian drone was launched and entered Israeli airspace. Israel retaliated with airstrikes, and one of their F-16s was hit by Syrian anti-aircraft missiles on its way back to Israel. So we do know that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps does have a presence at that airbase, and this may be simply an instance of the Israelis taking advantage of the fact that there has been this alleged chemical strike to strike at the Iranians there. So it's not at all clear what has happened. Basically, all we know is that the Syrian news agency is reporting that there was an airstrike or a missile strike on this T4 airbase.
At this point, who was responsible for these airstrikes in Syria overnight? Syria's story has been changing. They initially blamed the U.S., seemingly. Now they're pointing the finger at Israel. Russia, meantime, is blaming Israel. The Pentagon says it wasn't us. Whatever the story is, there's a lot of pressure, though, on the United States to act after those horrific images of a chemical attack just outside of Syria's capital. Some tough talk this morning from the president's Homeland Security advisor.
This is the one-year anniversary of our action. The last time they made the mistake of using these weapons and pushing the rest of the world. This isn't just the United States. This is one of those issues on which every nation, all peoples have all agreed and have agreed since World War II is an unacceptable practice. I wouldn't take anything off the table. These are horrible photos. We're looking into the attack at this point.
All right, nothing off the table. And from the president, this tweet, among others, specifically blaming Russia and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. President Putin, Russia, and Iran are responsible for backing the animal Assad. Big price to pay. The question is, what will that price be?
They see us our resolve breaking. If it becomes a tweet without meaning, then he's hurt himself in North Korea. If he doesn't follow through and live up to that tweet, he's going to look weak in the eyes of Russia and Iran. So this is a defining moment, Mr. President. You need to follow through with that tweet, show a resolve that Obama never did to get this right.
And the timing of this is somewhat problematic. Just days ago, President Trump indicated he wanted to pull U.S. troops out of Syria. Meantime, we expect a meeting of the UN Security Council on this very issue later today.
Syria and its ally Russia have blamed Israel for a missile attack on a government airbase. The Interfax news agency said Israeli warplanes had carried out the strikes from Lebanese airspace. Monday's attack hit the Tias airbase, known as T4, near the city of Homs. Reports say several people have died, some of them Iranian. This follows a suspected chemical attack on a rebel-held area near the Syrian capital Damascus, an attack that has been blamed on the Syrian government. Our correspondent Yolande Nell has been monitoring events from Jerusalem.
Well, the information we have is coming from the Russian Defense Ministry and also from the Syrians, and reports saying that 2 Israeli F-15 warplanes fired several missiles between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning GMT at this airbase, which is in the center of Syria. It's the largest military airbase in the country. We understand that some of the missiles struck the western part of the airfield. Now, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which monitors events in Syria from the UK, it's saying at least 14 people were killed there, including Iranians. And we do know that at this particular airbase, as well as the Syrians, there are Iranians, also members of the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah, and also, of course, Russians as well. The Russians say that there were no Russian specialists that were injured in this incident. Here, the Israeli military spokesperson is declining to comment, but that is quite typical because we have had dozens of strikes carried out by Israel, we know, inside Syria in recent years, without, in most cases, the Israelis commenting on them.
Lastly, talk about Syria. We've seen those horrific images coming out of Syria this morning, and it looks like there was a chemical attack. I know you're still looking into that. What do you think the president will do if it's indeed a chemical attack? What do you think he should do?
No, it's a quite serious problem. We've seen the photos of that attack. I think maybe first I would note the timing of this. It's the first thing that struck me. This is the 1-year anniversary of our action. The last time they made the mistake of using these weapons and pushing the rest of the world. This isn't just the United States. This is one of those issues on which every nation, all peoples have all agreed and have agreed since World War II is an unacceptable practice. So
is it possible there will be another missile attack?
I wouldn't take anything off the table. These are horrible photos. We're looking into the attack at this point. The State Department put out a statement last night, and the President's senior national security cabinet have been talking with him and with each other all throughout the evening and this morning, and myself included.
Even though the president this week said, we'll leave this to others, we should get out of there.
Well, I think the president's got a point that's been very clear, and I'm going to reiterate that point. The pendulum has swung in the wrong direction for too long, and the United States of America has been taken advantage of in their responsibility to provide security for the entire world. It is time to move that pendulum back in a way that brings regional partners and others with equities in these matters all around the globe into putting their resources and their treasure and their boys and girls on the line, and not just American troops. American troops aren't going to fix the 6 or 7 different ongoing conflicts and wars going on in the Middle East or in Syria at this stage. We need regional partnership increased, and we need U.S. presence decreased.
Now, the US was very quick to say that it was not behind this attack, but do you think that the Pentagon might have known this strike was coming?
Well, certainly even the Syrians at first suspected that it was the US that was behind this airstrike after that warning from President Trump after a suspected chemical weapon attack in Duma, in the rebel-held town there, that President Bashar al-Assad would have a big price to pay. Of course, the US is an extremely important ally of Israel, so we could expect that the Israelis would tell Washington what they were planning. Also, perhaps the Russians too, because we do know that the Russians have in the past, besides having very good relations with the Israelis in general, they have got involved to try to de-escalate the situation, particularly back in February when actually Israel targeted this very airfield after an Iranian drone was said to have been flown into Israeli airspace. And that was actually one of the most recent dangerous flare-ups in this confrontation. We believe that Moscow got involved to calm the situation at that point.
You use the word de-escalation, Yolande, but that seems a little unlikely now, given also what President Trump has been tweeting about the man he calls Animal Assad, and the fact that his new security advisor, national security advisor, John Bolton, has just taken up the role today, and he's known for being very hawkish.
New information from the Middle East now. Israel sends a stark warning to Iran after conducting airstrikes over the weekend against Iranian and Syrian forces in Syria.
I've been warning for some time about the dangers of Iran's military entrenchment in Syria. Iran seeks to use Syrian territory to attack Israel for its professed goal of destroying Israel. Israel holds Iran and its Syrian host responsible for today's aggression. We will continue to do whatever is necessary to protect our sovereignty and our security.
Joining us now, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, senior fellow and military expert at Defense Priorities. The Israelis have been trying to stay out of this Syrian war as much as possible. They went after what they say are Iranian targets. The Iranians denied that they had any personnel there. Where is the truth, Colonel?
Well, I think when you look at what actually happened, it's, Iran can deny it all day long, but I think in the end it's pretty clear that they did lose some troops. Independent reporting from the region confirms this. And, Israel has the right to defend themselves. And when you have, whether it was Syrian or an Israeli drone entering their airspace, they absolutely have the right to shoot that down and then to retaliate as they did. And, you'd think at some point that Syria and Iran realized that Israel's serious about their security, and then you can't just play around with them.
Yeah, well, and they had an Israeli F-16 that was shot down a couple of days back. The pilots ejected and escaped, but that's the first time Israel has lost a warplane since, 1982?
Right, yeah, 1982. And what apparently happened was that they were swamped with a number of, I think more than a dozen different anti-aircraft missiles, one of which finally got close enough to disable the aircraft. But that didn't work out very well for Syria or Iran either, because in retaliation, Israel went back and completely wiped out a number of different batteries. So the net for Israel and Syria was a definite win for Israel. And I think Syria is going to really consider again before they allow their airspace and their personnel to be used as a surrogate by Iran to do anything to Israel.
But that is the question. I mean, could this thing continue to escalate upwards from here?
No, I don't think so, because certainly Syria definitely cannot afford to have yet another military enemy, because they're still fighting for their lives in there, and Iran is struggling as they are. They're actually still struggling internally, so the last thing they need is to actually add to their difficulties, and they also don't want to spawn the military from the Israeli Defense Force, which is clearly the most powerful one in the region, against their assets there. So they want to try to be under the radar, but this time that they went too far.
But the Russians are propping up the Syrian government. And what are the dangers of Russian involvement, maybe against Israel here?
Right, and that is one of the definite the problems that afflicts the whole area. And this whole Syria thing really exposes just how fragile and chaotic the whole Middle East is, but especially in Syria. Russia definitely does not have any interest in engaging military operations against Israel, so they're raising their concerns about that, but apparently the high-level delegations between the two nations are trying to deconflict. But Russia's on a very delicate timeline, because they wanted defend their own interests in the Middle East, but they don't want to expand it into something that they don't even want to get into. So it's a danger, but I think that we're going to be able to navigate this.
Iran and North Korea are the two remaining members of George W. Bush's axis of evil. The North Koreans have issued this invitation to a summit meeting at the hands of Kim Jong-un's little sister. The South Korean president, I don't know, kind of rebuffed the invitation a little bit, or at least dodged it.
Right.
What do you think about the prospects? What are the North Koreans trying to accomplish here?
Well, first of all, let me just reinforce. There will be no war on the Korean Peninsula unless we start one with a preventive military strike. So that's why I hope that the administration, through Vice President Pence's overtures to have talks with North Korea, indicate a shift in their strategy. Because the ultimate objective of the United States is to prevent North Korea from using any of their nuclear weapons, which they've now had for over a decade, both now and into the future. And so we don't want to start a war that would actually prevent or cause the very thing we're trying to prevent, but we also have to recognize that diplomacy is going to take a long time, and we should enter into that, because if we don't even talk, then obviously no diplomacy is going to be possible. But that must never come at the expense of the clear and never blinking military deterrence that we have via our military.
Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, now with Defense Priorities. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.